Hi, and thank you for tuning into this video. This is the second in my series about crystal healing energies. The first was released about a month ago about tourmaline and the various types like watermelon, green, pink, golden tourmaline. And what's fascinating is that after debating for a while about whether or not to do a series about crystal healing energy, when I finally decided to sit down and talk about tourmaline, just before I clicked record on my cell phone, I got a 5-star review from a customer in my Etsy shop who bought a multi-tourmaline necklace. And I took that as kind of a synchronicity and a sign from existence that I was on the right path. Now, it's been a while since I released that video, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to make the next, but I really do make these videos when I feel inspired. I feel really strongly that when we communicate to each other, our energy, our emotional inner space, our esteem, our excitement about life, all of that stuff gets transmitted along with our words. And so I'm careful to only make a video when I'm feeling extremely positive, inspired, excited, and like existence is telling me this is the time to do it. Now that might sound hokey to some people, but I guess if you're watching a video about crystal healing energy, it's probably in your repertoire, like you understand what I mean by this. So I want to share that as I start this video, again, a synchronicity happened that I just want to say gratitude to existence for showing me now really is the time to talk about Precious White Opal. One of my favorite books about crystal healing and crystal energy is The Book of Stones by Robert Simmons and Naisha Asyan. So I'm happy to give a shout out to them because when I first found crystal energy back in 2005, the store called the Crystal Arc in Vancouver, where I first discovered crystal energy, they had a store copy that I used to flip through to determine, which stones I would like to work with and to kind of get the background on those stones. So it's a pretty thick book. It has tons of crystals in it. Right before I pushed record for this video, I opened it to a random page, just putting the energy out there that I want to make sure I'm on the right track. And it opened automatically to white precious opal. The stone I'm already decked out in. I've got an opal necklace as a mangtika. I've got some long dangly opal earrings. My middle finger on this hand has a white precious opal ring. So again, I take that as a sign from existence that yes, it's time to talk about white precious opal. So with that excitement set aside for the moment, why I feel that this is a stone to be talked about now is that white precious opal has been used by crystal healers as a stone to bring out our inner emotions in a way that we can tangibly face them and decide whether this is really how we want to feel about life and the world and our existence, or whether it's time to transmute those negative emotions into positive emotions, or to amplify those positive emotions and put them into practical application in life. So each and every one of us has like a default inner setting that's basically like the basis from which we experience life and the world. Some people, that base inner setting is boredom. Some people it's excitement. Some people it's laziness, and I kind of tend to fall into that, so no judgment. Some people it's ambition. Some people greed. Some people fear. Whatever the case, that changes throughout life based on the circumstances we're living in, based on what we're into at any given time, and also a lot of the time based on our surroundings. The people you work with, the people you go to school with, the people you hang out with on a regular basis will have a major influence on how you see the world. If you're surrounded by people who complain a lot, like in the kind of workplace where people compete over who's had the worst day, or if you work in a workplace that's really inspired and pumped and enthusiastic, it will kind of shift your focus because we are adaptable. And by we, I mean everybody. Whoever you talk to, that person will have a bit of an influence on you. Now, whether that's a good influence or a bad influence, it's irrelevant. Everyone you speak to has some kind of an influence on you. Now, the date that I'm making this video is March 18th, 2020, And the global pandemic of COVID-19 virus has put a lot of us into positions where our workplaces are shut down, social gatherings are canceled because bars and nightclubs and social clubs have been closed. Some people are in quarantine, some people are in self-isolation, some people are just making the decision to stay home to avoid possible exposure to the virus. And what that means for our emotional inner space is that aside from things like television and social media, books and magazines that we're exposing ourselves to, our energy is fairly self-contained. Other than the people we live with, or if we live alone, other than just our own selves, we no longer have that bombarding influence of other people on our emotional inner state. And so this makes now the perfect time to do some self-reflection, some introspection, and to decide whether the emotions we're experiencing on a regular basis are serving our higher good or holding us back. So I want to share something a little bit personal about myself to give an example of what I mean by this. I was in a cult in India for about 9 years of my life, where my entire world revolved around the unfortunate self-serving opinions of a fake guru. And during that time, I really didn't know who I was or what I believed in, because whatever he said was law within that cult group. When I left that cult after having kind of a rude awakening about his abuse and his control of people, I felt totally like the ground had been pulled out from under me. And it was a time for me to rediscover myself and my beliefs and to decide which path my life is meant to be taking now. But at first I started getting influenced by the wrong kind of people. There was a person who I won't name who actually told me crystals were evil and that tarot was evil and that I should disregard anything mystical and spiritual because it's wrong. I was so emotionally vulnerable at that point and so eager to avoid falling back into another kind of occult trap that I allowed my beliefs to be conditioned by somebody else who had an agenda that was not conducive towards what I choose to be my purpose in life. So it took me a while to get past that and to reevaluate whether I actually need somebody else's ideals imposed on me, or whether I should just jump into life following my own inspiration and my own enthusiasm. When we work with a stone like white precious opal, it allows us to see when we're being manipulated by somebody else, because any feeling of agitation, discomfort, annoyance, or where we feel like we're being repressed or we have to censor ourselves to be palatable to other people, we try to ignore those emotions when we need those other people around us in order to feel whatever it might be, the positive reinforcement they give us. For example, if you're somebody who chooses to be vegan, like I am, if there's people in your life who condescend about that and who grill you over it and who make fun of you about it, if you stop bringing veganism up, they might give you the positive reinforcement of saying, well, thank you for not wasting our time talking about animal rights anymore. And even though that's kind of a veiled insult where they're telling you that by censoring yourself, you're doing something really good, if you appreciate the company of those people, you might strive to impress them more, so you push your own self down even further in order to be acceptable to them. And this isn't just about veganism, this could be anything. If you're somebody who likes to daydream and to be by yourself, but your friends think you need to be more outgoing and engaged in the conversation, you might set aside your inner fantasy world in order to be more sociable. Or vice versa, if you're a really social, outgoing person and somebody tells you you need to be more introverted because otherwise you won't develop your intuition, you might kind of pare down your bubbliness and your outgoingness in order to try to seem more chill. Whatever the case may be, when we're trying to change ourselves to please other people around us, it doesn't feel good. Part of us will feel fraudulent, and part of us will feel as if we're not living up to the fullness of what we can be. We are each unique, we're each different, we each have different likes and dislikes. And unless we explore those aspects of ourselves that make us feel fulfilled and excited and enthusiastic, for example, for me, that would be talking about crystals and making energy tools out of gemstones. For you, it might be anything, or maybe it's the same thing. Whatever it is, as long as we're suppressing that part of ourselves for someone else, we will feel like we're being jilted and ripped off in life. Now, I speak from experience because, like I said, in that cult in India, I had to completely, I guess you could say, destroy my own individual identity in order to have a new identity imposed on me by the fraud leader. And in relationships, the same thing sometimes happens. You might be cranking a song that you love and suddenly your partner tells you, oh, turn that shit off, I can't stand that song. And suddenly you feel ashamed or embarrassed about your music taste. When we feel ashamed about who we are and what we like, we really, really, really need to take a moment to ask ourselves, is it better to be palatable to somebody else? Or is it better to be who we are? And if they like us enough, if somebody truly wants you in their life, appreciates you, and decides that you're worth the effort, they will learn to adapt and to embrace what makes you unique. And it'll be basically like a mosaic instead of a melting pot. Okay, I don't want to get too political here, but I'm Canadian. And Canada's national image is that our nation is a mosaic. And that when people come from all parts of the world and immigrate to Canada, they bring with them a new piece of that mosaic. Their culture, their traditions, their beliefs become like a new little piece of Canada that gets added in. The United States cultural self-image is that of a melting pot where whoever comes in, what they bring with them gets dissolved and they become Americans. It's a really subtle difference here, but being a part of a mosaic instead of a melting pot is what I personally feel we should strive to be in this world. Now, in the Book of Stones, that random page I opened to before this video where Robert Simmons describes the spiritual property of white precious opal, the word he uses to describe the frequency of this stone is that it has a spiritual fire, like a divine inner fire within it that consumes whatever exists in our life that's distracting and pulling us away from ourselves, from our truth, and from our emotional holisticness, from how we're supposed to be in order to be really getting the most out of life, but in a way that doesn't burn us and hurt us. There are other gemstones available like moldavite and like black precious opal that really intensely shake up life and kind of force us to transform by burning whatever is not serving us, but in a way that can feel a little bit abrupt and agitating. So if we're not really ready to move forward, it makes us feel like we've been shaken up or like we're going through some kind of negative upheaval. When we wear white precious opal, it a little bit more gently burns up that negativity so our positivity can shine through, but in a way where we don't feel like we just got derailed in the process of rediscovering our truth. So what I would recommend during this time of quarantine, if you're somebody who has to stay home from work because of this, or from school because of this, or if, some parties you've been looking forward to are getting canceled and you'd really rather be out there socializing, but you're stuck with yourself, now is the time to be grateful for yourself. And if you choose to wear a piece of precious white opal, which I highly recommend, allow its energy and its spiritual fire to help you recognize what it is in you that makes you the perfect, beautiful, unique, creative person that you are. One of my favorite properties of precious white opal is that it allows our hidden talents and our personal capabilities to come forward to the surface. When we're not suppressing and repressing ourselves, that's when our ideas are going to kind of bubble up the most, and we're going to realize what it is that we're meant to be doing with our lives. People sometimes ask I mean, I used to be a professional tarot card reader, so one of the most common questions I was asked by my clients, they would ask me, what was their personal talent? And this is something that I used to find really sad because for me, I do abstract drawings, all kinds of abstract paintings and watercolors, so I've always felt like my talent, so to speak, is abstract art. The thought that somebody doesn't know what their talent is, they don't know whether they can sing because they've never tried, or they don't know whether they can act or draw or sculpt or make jewelry or speak to the public because they've never tried it before, that's kind of sad. But when we think about the society in which we're raised, so much pressure is put on us to be good cogs in the machine or part of a melting pot to fit in. And so if somebody isn't naturally athletically gifted or academically gifted, they don't understand that what they have to offer is equally valid and equally important. Because really, if you think about it, what gets the most credit at school? What gets the most recognition? If you're a star athlete or if you've got a 4.0 grade point average. But what if you're somebody who's more, I guess, dramatic? What if you're super creative? What if you see the world in a way that other people don't see it? Or what if you're empathic? People who can really get other people and be a nurturing, calming presence might make the best nurturers or the best healers or the best counselors. But that's not usually recognized if they're failing math and they suck at gym class, right? So even if you were, there's a flip side to that. People who were really academically great or athletically great, and then they finish school and enter the real world, and suddenly people don't care how smart they are or how fast they can run. People care what they bring to the corporate environment or what they do with themselves. Suddenly those individuals feel like they peaked in high school and they've got nothing more to offer. Whenever we're at that kind of time of crossroads where we feel like we should be doing something, but we don't know what that something is, white precious opal makes an awesome gemstone ally, because when we wear it, we're able to silence those inner voices that are constantly telling us you're not like other people, you don't fit in, you don't have anything, you can't do what these people can do, try to be more like your brother or your sister or your parents. When those voices get silenced, and believe me, those inner voices are not you and they're not natural. They're just that regurgitated memory that comes in the form of our thoughts when we're thinking of things people have told us in the past. Meditation isn't about becoming inwardly mute and not thinking. It's about being able to decide what to think, decide how to feel about ourselves, to decide what we bring to the surface and what we can, in a friendly way, just dismiss from our space because it's not part of us, not serving us. White precious opal helps us come to that space of meditation where we can choose inner silence, or we can choose creative problem solving, or we can choose self-discovery. And so what I'm focusing on during this time of global pandemic, when it's better to stay in than to go out, and where it's better to be alone than with other people, instead of thinking of this as a time of social distancing, I'm thinking of this as a time of self-discovery. Now, a lot of people are getting critical on social media. Some are saying, wow, this pandemic is good because the toxic emissions and the pollution is reduced. And other people are saying it's absolutely not good because look at the stock market and how am I going to pay rent this month? I'm not saying that we can make this into a great thing or that it is good or that it is bad. What I'm saying is everything we face in life, every situation we're put into can be an opportunity. And so this is a beautiful opportunity to learn about ourselves again, to get to know ourselves again. Now that spiritual fire of white precious opal that burns away the negative patterns, the negative emotions that don't serve us is really beautiful. Now, there have been myths throughout the ages that say opal is bad luck. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe black cats are bad luck because I love cats and I've never had a bad day when a black cat has crossed my path because I just pet it, scratch it under the chin. In the same way, when I hear that a gemstone is bad luck, I don't avoid that stone. I immerse myself into making jewelry out of that stone, meditating with it, wearing it. The reason so many people have thought opals are bad luck, the main reason anyway, is that they do intensify and amplify our emotions. And so if we're emotionally vulnerable, they might make us feel extremely raw. If we're empathic, they might make us even more attuned to the feelings of the people around us. If we're going through anxiety, holy moly, watch out, because you're going to be like a nervous wreck when you put on the white opal. Why is that a good thing and not a bad thing? Because sometimes we get so used to those emotions that are not necessarily contributing to our well-being that we ignore them. And so we live our lives in that constant state of discomfort, but we don't even realize it's uncomfortable because we're used to it. So when white precious opal amplifies that, suddenly we recognize it for what it is. It's kind of like if there's some white noise going on in the background. You get into an elevator and there's a low playing song. At first you just ignore it, but if somebody cranks up the volume, suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I'm not in a space of silence right now. There's something I can hear. Just like that, you might not realize that your emotional inner space isn't neutral. It's not a blank slate where every day what you experience colors it good or bad. There is something constantly going on in that emotion, and wearing white precious opal helps you recognize it. Now, of course, if your inner space is really excited, really happy, really positive, really exploratory, that's going to amplify too. And so you'll be able to make the most out of that positivity. Whatever the case, there is no better time to work with white precious opal than now. Because if we're wearing it into a crowded place, into a workplace, into school, and it does amplify our empathy and it does amplify our feeling, when we pick up on the worries or the sadness of others, we don't necessarily want that super duper increase in our inner space. But when we are in this time of self-isolation, quarantine, self-discovery, and socially isolating, whatever that white precious opal amplifies, we'll be able to recognize it as ours and embrace it or move past it or work with it, whatever the case may be. So check it out, try it if you're interested. Of course, all the white precious opal I'm wearing in this video, like this beautiful piece, it's actually a necklace that I'm wearing on my head, or these long dangly precious opal earrings, or this ring, plus some pieces like this men's bracelet that I've made white precious opal with black obsidian, or this beauty, I should have worn it, white precious opal with Herkimer diamonds. All of that stuff is in my Etsy shop. I'll put the link in the video description. And if you buy anything in my store and just mention seeing this video, no matter what it is you buy, I will include a little white precious opal as my self-discovery gift to you. Because really I feel now is the time we play with this gift white precious opal is giving us. Invoke that divine inner flame that it has and see where it takes us. When we all raise our inner space to the highest and discover what it is we can contribute to the world, when this pandemic comes to a close, and of course it will, probably pretty quickly, when the pandemic comes to a close and we return to life as usual, we're not going to be returning to the same stress and anxiety and frustration that we left when all of this started. We'll be returning to it with a new zeal for life and a clarity about what we're going to do. So with that said, I don't want to drone on for too long in this video, but thank you for tuning in, and expect new videos very soon about the other forms of opal, including black precious opal, fire opal, and the common opals, pink, green, and blue common opal. I look forward to sharing those soon, and you're welcome to leave a comment below about which stones you'd like to know more about, or if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section and I will be happy to answer. Much love, and from my heart to yours in this time of self-isolation, enjoy yourself. You are your own best friend. You are your own awesome company. So don't feel too alone in this because, hey, you've got you. See you next time. Bye.